What is up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will be rebuilding my Gargoyle Gecko's small, extra tall Exo Terra enclosure. I had built this enclosure all bioactive, expanding foam background, but unfortunately ants decided to come try to make home inside his enclosure, which ants can be deadly. I had to put him in a temporary, smaller Exo Terra. He has been in his temporary enclosure for a couple weeks now. I need to get him out of there and back in here. So I will show you guys what I did personally that worked up until this ant invasion happened. First thing we're gonna do is get the enclosure laid onto its back. What I like to do is map out the background with cork bark, so that's what we'll do. Now that I'm happy with the background, I'm going to take a picture of it so I remember the layout. I'm going to take out all the cork and start prepping the background. We're gonna start with the silicone first. The silicone that I use is 100% aquarium safe. I picked this up from my local reptile shop. This is a brand that I've used before and one that I can recommend. So I'm going to start applying a layer all over the background. I want to make sure that this stays and is not going to go anywhere. If you like salt and vinegar chips, you will love this part like I do. The fumes definitely get pretty strong in here. So I'm going to apply the silicone up to about this line right here. Everything lower than that is going to be dirt and plants. So now that we have it all in the background, I'm going to smooth it out a little bit. Woo! Stinky. So now that that part is done, we are on to step 2, the great stuff, black foam, fish and pond safe, maximum durability. So now we'll be applying all over where the silicone is. So now I'm going to refer back to my picture. I'm going to do the expanding foam in sections. That way I can make sure I get every piece firmly secured. So first we have this guy about right here. With hollow pieces like this or curved pieces, I'm going to apply as much foam as I can in here to once again make sure that it's going to be held as tight as it can be. Time to switch. Sometimes I weigh some pieces of cork down if I want them to hold in a certain way. I feel like no matter how hard you try to be careful with this, it gets everywhere. This is by far the messiest part. That is why I like to use gloves. I just got some on my wall. So at this point, phase 1 is done. I'm going to wait for this to dry, give it like an hour or so. Go back in, carve everything out that I don't want. I have some cutting utensils of different types here to help me out. Yes, these are kitchen knives. Yes, I used this for the last one. It still has some dried expanding foam on it. So this layer will be the more final detailed layer. This is where I will be putting the dried soil on top of, so just keep that in mind. You want to apply this as quick as you can, as detailed as you can, because once this dries a little more, it's kind of hard to get the dirt compacted into it. So now let's put the dirt in. tell how dusty and dry it is. That is exactly how you want it to be able to stick to the background. I also like to flatten out the expanding foam once the dirt is on top of it. And the best part is this is pretty forgivable. So if you don't like part of it, you just carve it out and repeat. And that is it. So this is what we're looking like now. I'm gonna let this dry again for about an hour. Make another few touch-ups here and there. I see a couple little spots that I will probably add a little bit more substrate to. So I'm back about an hour later. It's time to stand the enclosure up now that the expanding foam has dried. So now you can start to see the background. You can dust off a lot of the dirt here and all the excess soil falling off down to the bottom. I like to just reuse when I go back and do little adjustments. You can see some of this right here. The substrate didn't take to, so we'll be doing this part right here. There's a couple other little spots. Here's another one. The actual background itself looks pretty good. There's another little spot I'll probably go over a little bit. I'm gonna just rip away at most of the spots that didn't take, like this. So I'm just gonna go back in, do a little bit of detail work, stuff some moss and some dirt in some of these areas. For this part, we're gonna be using some Zoom Ed frog moss. I'm gonna be putting this in some of the small holes like this. I'm going to switch over to a couple different types of moss. So this is where I'm gonna end for today. I'm going to let the background dry, let all the silicone cure, so I will see you tomorrow. So my plan for today is going to be lay the enclosure back down. I'm going to be putting ledges kind of over here a little bit. I'm gonna use some tape to tape these ledges to the wall so they will stay. We're back about an hour later. Let's stand it up again. So let's go ahead and start carving. Honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about this piece right here. So we're gonna scrap it. This is definitely a multi-day project for somebody looking to get a specific result like myself. But the cool thing that I've been saying this whole time, this project is very forgiving. It is something that you can add to, subtract to. You just cover up the black expanding foam or the silicone with more dirt or moss or whatever it is, just to kind of mask it, and thankfully it all ends up looking natural in the end. We are back. Hopefully today is the last day. So I'm gonna conceal the rest of this black foam with a mixture of more moss and substrate. I'm going to add a bit more silicone. And we are done with the background. So now we're out in the living room. I got my Exo Terra placed on its stand. We're gonna go ahead, add the drainage layer, the mesh, the substrate, and then finish off with the plants, isopods, and springtails. So for the drainage layer, I'm gonna go ahead and use the premium drainage layer from Lagarde. I used a different brand last time, but this is what I could get my hands on this time for this enclosure. Any drainage layer is really gonna serve the same purpose. These ones are a little bit bigger. The last ones I used were a little bit smaller. But let's go ahead and put these in first. I used about 2.5 bags of the drainage layer. I'm gonna go ahead and put a piece of mesh in between the drainage layer and then the substrate. So now you have to get a gigantic bag of Reptisoil. Let's go ahead and start mapping out the plants and different pieces of wood for the bottom of the enclosure. Okay, cool. So first let's go ahead and put a staghorn fern. For the last insert up top, we're gonna go ahead and use an alligator fern. Now this one used to be in his enclosure and the layout was different, so it definitely overgrew a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and break this up, use it in 2 different places. So let's go ahead, add this palm in there. We'll add this button fern to the back. And lastly, we'll add this So now that we have all the plants in, let's go ahead, spray it down, add the springtails and the isopods, and then we'll be all done. The cleanup crew. So now that we're done with the enclosure, I'm gonna let it sit for probably about a week or so, let things start up a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and introduce my Gargoyle Gecko to it. This whole enclosure probably took about a good 4 days for me. I worked on it for a couple hours each day. You could probably get this all done within a span of 1 or 2 days. I just had a lot going on this week, but I am very happy with the outcome. I just want to elaborate on the fact that I am newer to Bioactive enclosures and custom background builds, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm happy I got to show you guys how I set this up. So thank you guys for watching. Comment, like, subscribe down below. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I will see you in the next video.